Hi, everyone. Happy Sunday. I am excited to be with you today. I hope you're having a great day. I am hoping to have this be an ongoing occurrence where we will be coming out every Sunday with a virtual newsletter of sorts. As we're expanding and doing more projects and having more opportunities, we have more and more announcements. And instead of taking up time on the podcast to do that on Tuesday, I thought it might be better to do them on Sunday. And then I'll also be sharing some spiritual thoughts, some things maybe to go along with your studies on Sundays and as you're preparing for the week. So today is the first virtual newsletter. Welcome. And hopefully we'll keep this going every week. As I was preparing for this, this newsletter, one of the topics that I felt impressed to talk about just briefly, like this is kind of a mini episode. We could go really deep on this, but we won't. I'm going to keep it a little bit more simple. But something that I've been thinking about lately is the idea of keeping the Sabbath day holy. I don't know if we talk about that as much anymore. And if you're like me, that's something that's become kind of lax in my practice and my worship. But as I've been thinking about it and pondering it, I started to see how the Sabbath is actually a very feminine thing. And there are a lot that harkens to the divine feminine. And so I thought that I would just share with you some of these ideas, and I'd be really curious to hear how this changes your perception of the Sabbath, if it changes the way that you feel like you want to observe the Sabbath. When we see the Sabbath as a feminine thing, even as a woman in some traditions. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about numbers. I want to talk about this ratio of 1 out of 7. This is a pattern that I've seen repeating as I study the scriptures and look at symbology, is that it seems like 7 is a very feminine number. In the scriptures, we have all sorts of different places that talk about 7 women. 7 women were required for Moses to become who he was. There were 7 women that participated in his journey: his mother, his midwives, his wife, his sister, and I think there were a couple that I'm missing. The Pharaoh's daughter, right? And so he had all these women that were needed for him to become Moses. There were 7 women at the well. Mary Magdalene was associated with the number 7 daimonia, which doesn't mean evil spirits, as we've been told. It has more, I think, to do with angelic sentinels or 7 levels of progression. But 7 in the scriptures is very deeply tied into feminine characters. And what I've been seeing is that as we look at time, it seems that God invites us to take 1 out of each 7 to really come back to the divine feminine, to come back to our own divinity, our internal journey, right? And so 1 out of 7 days, the Sabbath, we're invited to focus on that. Also, if you listen to the episode earlier this year about Christ in you, 4 days out of a 28-day cycle, that's 1 in 7. And those 4 days are very feminine. You're meant to be resting. You're looking for a place of peace. You're focused on your body and your spirit connection. Like, these are very feminine things. And then even in more in Hebrew tradition, you have the idea of the Shemitah cycle, where every 7 years you would have a Sabbath year. And this is a year that you would rest. You would rest the land. You would take a break from your job. You would release people from their debts. So there's this ongoing pattern of the feminine being associated with this 1 out of 7, looking back and reconnecting to our devotion and our worship, even the divine within us. That's really what the divine feminine is about. As much as our Heavenly Mother is an important aspect of that, it's also just about us. It's about our souls, which are feminine, or were referred to as feminine tradition, reconnecting to that. So I thought that was really interesting. Also, the idea of a day of rest, right? So in the creation, God created 6 days, and then on the 7th day, they rested. In modern revelation, we learn that rest has to do with entering the presence of God, entering into Christ's presence or the presence of our heavenly parents. And so it seems that there's this ongoing invitation that after every 7, right, 1 out of 7, we're turning back and we are reconnecting to God. We are seeking to come into their presence. I think there's a lot of interesting practices that are associated with that. where perhaps the Sabbath is a really great day for us to meditate. It is a great opportunity for us to have rituals, both our church rituals of going to church and participating in the sacrament, but even creating rituals in our own family. I love some of the Jewish rituals of lighting a candle, and they welcome the Sabbath as a bride. Again, that feminine imagery that's coming on. There's also a deep connection to the Holy Ghost, which has a very feminine role, very feminine language associated with it. And so when we start to see the Sabbath this way, we begin to recognize that really what the Sabbath is looking at is our intention. What are we purposefully choosing to do? Who are we choosing to be in a way that is consecrated and dedicated and sanctifying for ourselves in our life and for our bodies and spirits? I'll talk about that a little bit more. In Exodus 31:16, God says that the Sabbath is meant to be as a perpetual covenant, right? A covenant being a relationship. This is an opportunity for us to step back into a fullness and a focus of our covenant with God, as opposed to our celestial responsibilities and the things that we're always focused on for our survival. The sacrament obviously has a tie-in to covenant. The sacrament and blood and bread and wine actually have deep symbolic feminine meaning historically and esoterically. I won't go into that today because that could be a whole episode on its own. Again, that's not to take away from the way we interpret those symbols as being related to Christ, because he was the perfect embodiment of his father and his mother. So that's not wrong, but there are lots of layers there. If that's something you're interested in studying, you definitely should. In Jeremiah 17:21, we are invited on the Sabbath to bear no burden. And I really love that, because to me, I just see this feminine invitation of surrender, right? Of laying down the things that we normally carry, and instead of receiving rest, receiving peace, receiving rejuvenation to our souls. In Isaiah 58 verses 13 and 14, this is where we learn that the Sabbath is meant to be a delight. And the scriptures basically say that if you delight in the Sabbath, like you will have delight in yourself. And so the way that we approach this day becomes our experience. There's an element there of creation, of co-creation, that we are creating our reality as we are being intentional and doing that inward work and cultivating that feminine power within each of us. It was interesting to look at the accounts of Christ in his mortality and how he responded to the Sabbath. It became very clear to me that he's a lot less worried about what people do on the Sabbath, and he's more interested in why they're doing it. So, for example, they had a lot of rules at the time that you can't harvest on the Sabbath. And one day he and his disciples were out, they were in a cornfield, they were all really hungry, and so they harvested the corn, and they were eating the corn. And people got mad at him for that. And he's like, that wasn't something that was concerning to him. Obviously, he was attacked for healing on the Sabbath, right? But if we look at these things and we look at the intention behind them, what's the intention? Well, these men and women had been serving. They had been pouring out their lives to help other people. And so that meant that they needed to receive. We're very comfortable in our society of give, especially women. There's kind of this idolization of, the mother who's always burned out and is always serving her children and like never takes time for herself. And yet we are not our best selves if we don't stop and receive, especially women. The feminine motion is the motion of receiving. And so we have to receive before we're really prepared to give to others to the degree that we need to and want to. So it seems to me that the Lord understood that, and he understood that it's more about intention. Is our intention aligned to God? And then here were some really cool esoteric traditions that I thought were interesting. So the Sabbath has one element of it it was seen as a return to Eden, a return to the garden, if you will, similar to the program that we're going to be doing that starts next week, which is crazy. But yeah, so you're returning to wholeness, you're returning to unity. In the Kabbalah, it said that the Sabbath was a taste of the world to come. And in this way, you could also say in the world that has been, right? That we are meant to be stepping out of celestial space back into that terrestrial, that heightened space, that space that it's easier to connect to God from. One quote that I liked is, "It's a day that mirrors eternity." There's a whole aspect of the union that has to do with the reuniting of masculine and feminine energy. So in the Hebrew tradition, the Sabbath is when the Shekinah reunites with the Holy One being the masculine, Christ, or the masculine represented by Christ sometimes, and the Shekinah being the divine feminine presence of God, which is ever present. It's glory, right? It is Heavenly Mother. And so we see this like Father and Mother coming together at this time. I'll talk a little bit more about that. The Sabbath is also seen as sacred time in the idea that it's outside of linear time. So linear time is what we're all very used to in this world. It's very masculine, right? But the idea is that on the Sabbath, we're engaging in a cycle. Again, that 1 out of 7, we're coming back and reconnecting to the cyclical nature, the feminine nature of time. In that way, we can see the Sabbath as a temple in time and also womb space that is holding us and like preparing us as a new creation. Back to that idea of the reunion of masculine and feminine energies, the Sabbath is also viewed as this mystical marriage where we bring masculine and feminine into balance with each other, and they create blessings, they create peace, they create wholeness. The sacrament is also representative of this masculine feminine balance. So this was interesting to think about. So the bread, the water, the body, the blood, we can also look at that as matter and spirit. Matter has connection to mother, and spirit is associated with masculinity. So in this view, the most integrated things, it's really hard to pull apart and say, is it feminine, is it masculine? In reality, there's masculine and feminine to both matter and spirit. But in this view, with the bread and the water or wine, it's matter, mother, spirit, and father. And so we're bringing these things back together again. We can see the altar as this womb, this new creation space. And if you think about just how we participate in the sacrament, there is this aspect of relationship. We are in relationship with God. We are also in community with each other as a church. And those things, both of those things being very feminine. Okay, and then this is the last thing. Sorry, this is kind of a longer spiritual thought than I'll have than normal. This is not as in-depth as a whole podcast episode, but hopefully it gives you just some interesting things to think about. And maybe it'll change the way that you view the Sabbath. So the last kind of, or some of the last aspects of the esoteric Sabbath is that it had to do with the restoration of the soul, body, and spirit, right? That we are bringing these things together. We are grounding in our bodies. We're creating unity. We're allowing for the flow of spirit through our bodies, and we're experiencing that rejuvenation. This rest helps us return to our soul center, that divine spark that lives in our heart, right? So another way to view the Sabbath is helping us get out of our head space that we're normally in and get more into our heart space, and feeling and connecting with God through that portal that is. Again, an awesome time to do healing work, to do meditation, and to really reconnect to your heart. Especially if you're not used to doing that, like this is a great way to practice. And maybe you'll find some things that need to be healed in order for you to connect to your heart fully. And then, of course, as we've talked about this entire time, esoterically, the Sabbath was the divine feminine. She was viewed as a bride, as a queen, as the mother, as the thing that we are working up to all week long. And then we're able to receive. We're able to receive her. And also we're able to receive the truth of ourselves and who we really are. So this is a beautiful time to honor the divine within us and the divine without. Okay, as I said, I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on any of those things. I went pretty quickly, but hopefully that'll just enhance and enliven your what it means to you to keep the Sabbath day holy. Perhaps looking at, how we can incorporate some more of the feminine nature and integrate that into our everyday life. Okay, that said, I have a couple of announcements for you guys. Again, this is primarily a newsletter, so here's the news coming up for you. This week, we're going to be back with our first podcast episode of this new iteration of Hidden Wisdom, formerly Latter-day Disciples. And so I'm very excited for this. We're going to kind of be doing a series over the next couple weeks. I have a lot of thoughts, and they're not entirely filled out yet, but I'm hopeful that as we get into it, these things will build on each other, and we're all going to learn some really beautiful things. So I'm excited for that. Look for that Tuesday morning. Also, our group mentorship program starts a week from today. This is literally the last week for you to be able to sign up for this. We have an amazing group of women that are participating. And if you feel called to it, guess what? You're invited to be here. If payment is a problem for anyone, please reach out to me. We have payment plans available that can make it as easily as $100 a month. And I'm happy to work with you as to your situation. If you feel like you need to be here, just let me know. And I'm happy to have that discussion with you. Okay. I think those are the biggest things for me. And then I did want to share also, okay, this is also very exciting. So I have partnered with my good friend. Her name is Bonnie Randall, and she's amazing. And we are actually creating an events platform, co-creating it together with a couple of other women. And this is a big deal. This is so exciting. Bonnie is so amazing at all of the things event planning. And so this is way more than I would say I have stepped my toes into yet when it comes to events. It's so incredibly professional. It's so very well thought out. It's several days worth of a retreat that we are working on currently and that we are building and that we will be building in the future. So I'm excited to share our very first event is coming up at the end of September. And I'd love for you to join us if you feel called to it. This event is particularly for women who are business builders and who feel called to do their work and their ministry for God and in alignment with God, which is something that I very much resonate with. So I want to share this trailer with you, and I'll give you a little bit more information after the fact. Hold on just one second.
Open up the heavens, come rain down your presence. Jesus, come, inhabit the praise of the sinner and saint. Jesus, come, and Jesus, move. Here and now, we call on you, Lord, come and meet us today. Here and now, have your way. Open up the heavens, come rain down your presence. We know there's more, so much more. Here and now, we call on you, Lord, come and meet us today. Here and now, have your way. Open up the heavens, come rain down your presence. We know there's more, there is so much more. Open up the heavens.
Okay, so as I said, I'm so excited about this event. It's really going to be so incredible. There's going to be so many opportunities for you to learn and gain in that way, and then also opportunities for you to rest, right? And have that rejuvenation, have that connection with other women. The venue is completely beautiful in Preston, Idaho. I mean, at the end of September, like it's just the best that there's ever going to be. So we are doing a deal right now. We're going to be doing deals regularly, but I encourage you to register sooner than later. So as soon as you hear, just go check it out for yourself and you'll be able to find out if this is for you or not. But right now we have a deal going on for the next couple of days where you can register for a lower package and get the higher package. So what I mean by that, here, let me actually. So there are several different options to make sure that everything works for you and your budget, and that you get the most out of this event, and that you receive what it is you feel called to receive. So we have a number of packages ranging from Diamond, which is like our highest VIP package, to even just a day pass. Even if you just want to come for one day, you also get to eat with us and have that experience on that level. The savings is incredible. But right now, what happens is that you can get Diamond, which is the highest package, for the gold price, which is saving you like a crazy amount, like almost $2,000. And then the same thing, you can get gold for the general admission price, which is saving you $1,000 plus. So definitely go check this out. The link is going to be in our bio. You can see some of the speakers that are putting it on. You can see the whole schedule, all the accommodations, Q&A. Bonnie loves to spoil people, so there will be much spoiling and gift giving and all sorts of things. Like, the value of this event, it just can't be captured in dollars in this way. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. And again, we'll be sharing the different deals that are going on. So let me actually just tell you. Yes, so this deal is going on through Wednesday. You can upgrade to gold or diamond for the lower price. And then after that, we're going to do a bring your friend sale. So starting on August 6th, you and your friend can come for a discounted rate. So keep that on your calendar. Again, reach out to me if you have any questions. I hope to see you there. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. I've actually been with Bonnie this weekend, participating in like a little mini retreat, and you guys, like, this is just so good for your soul. So please come if you feel inspired to come. All right, I think that's enough for announcements this week. Love you guys again. So excited to be back with the podcast on Tuesday. So excited for this group mentorship. And if you have anything, if you want to work with me in any other capacity, please go check out meghanfarner.com. I'd love to work with you individually, or even you and your husband, if you guys are looking to really figure out that polarity piece and how to apply some of the principles in my book. I'd love to support you in that. Okay, you guys are fantastic. Have a wonderful week.